In 30 more years of gaming, we have seen every corner of the world being recreated in video games, yet the way games depict and recreate real-life locations vary quite substantially. This sparks the question, how do video games depict real-life cities, and is there a proper way to do it? First things first, roll the intro. If you have already seen some videos of mine, I think it is no secret that I adore when video games are set in real-life locations. It intrigues and fascinates me to see a landmark that I have seen before being digitally depicted, and thanks to new technologies, we have seen better and better recreations in-game. Remaking a city in a video game is no small feat, and over the past years we've seen many different approaches taken by various studios to achieve this goal. By simply looking at all games set in Italy, which by the way there are a ton, we can see great differences between games, even of the same genre. We see games like Assassin's Creed Brotherhood that aim for a higher fidelity to landmarks found in the Italian capital of Rome, and games like Depict 4 that try to depict the local vibe of real-life places without aiming to recreate a particular town in the island of Sicily. It goes without saying that there is no one method to code a familiar-looking town in digital form. Some games make it realistic, and some others stylistic. The questions I therefore ask to myself are how do games depict real-life locations, in which ways games use real-life cities and landmarks to expand their gameplay and narrative, and perhaps above all, is there a right way to make these worlds? The short answer to the first question is in many ways. The long answer to it is in so many ways. Video games that are set in real-life locations are of any genre, take place in any time era, and are of any size. Some games take place explicitly in a real-life city, some are inspired, and some others vaguely represent a known location. You get the gist. There is so much variation on the table, and I think there is no better way to answer the question posed with as many examples as possible. The series I would like to kick off this discussion to showcase the widerness of the topic in hand is 2K's Mafia. The trilogy proposes to the player 3 different fictional cities that recreate to different degrees of fidelity their real-life counterparts. Mafia's 2 Empire Bay is the most generic town of the 3, taking inspiration from 50s Midwestern metros but without following any city's geography. Mafia 1's Lost Heaven is a closer depiction of New York City, with similar neighborhoods, some sampling geography, and a more evident attachment to the city's culture of 1920. At last, Mafia 3's New Bordeaux is extremely inspired by 70s Louisiana's biggest city of New Orleans, both culturally and geographically, with various landmarks, characters, events, and more for the player to explore. These 3 cities demonstrate clearly that the degree of faithfulness can change greatly between games of the same genre. All 3 games wish to make the player feel like he or she is in a real place, regardless of the reality of the place themselves. All 3 games have very different approaches, and thus different results. In Mafia 2 you feel like in a generic America. In Mafia 1 you feel like in a generic New York City, and in Mafia 3 you feel like in a realistic depiction of New Orleans. Many games do not aim for a perfect recreation of a city, but rather aim to catch the quote-unquote vibe of the city. Take a title like Sleeping Dogs set in Hong Kong. The game's depiction of the city is clearly smaller than the real deal, but the main locations as well as the main characteristics of the Cantonese city are alive and well, making the player feel he or she is truly roaming around Hong Kong Island. It would be a Herculean task to recreate a city one-to-one in a video game for the player not only to explore, but also to have meaningful interactions with the various locales scattered around the city. Even studios like Ubisoft need to make design compromises when they create their iconic open worlds. Let us take Watch Dogs 2 as an example and her recreation of San Francisco. From the Golden Gate down to the street of Oakland to the island of Alcatraz, the Californian city is faithfully recreated in the game. You can drift around Lombard Street, chill at Pier 39, and finish your day at Ghirardelli Square, all in an open world, free roaming title. But even Ubisoft's depiction of San Fran is much more than the real deal. By looking at the map of the city and taking Columbus Avenue as a reference point, a road that starts from the Trans-American Pyramid and ends up at the bay at Jefferson Street, we can clearly see that some shortcuts were made. Presidio Park is kept more or less intact, but placed slightly closer to Columbus, cutting off Cajalos and Pacific Heights, not to mention that Presidio Park was kind of merged to Botanic Gardens. The Richmond district is fully cut from the game, and Lombard Street takes essentially the place of Vanessa Avenue as the main street to the Golden Gate. You get the idea, even games that aim for an accurate depiction of a real-life metropolitan area will make some cuts. I could tie Watch Dogs Chicago, Sniper Elite's Berlin, and Spec Ops The Line Dubai, but you get the gist. What you might not get is why. Why don't video games that take place in real-life locations not recreate them to perfect scale? Time and resources are of course part of the answer, but the main reason why it would make little sense to recreate a city one-to-one is due to the functionality the world has gameplay-wise. In other words, if you make your world bigger, you have to fill it in with meaningful activities and point of interest without making it repetitive and monotonous. Sega's Yakuza is a game that recreates a real-life location almost one-to-one, the Tokyo district of Kamurocho, based in the real-life district of Kabuchiko, and it's filled with plentiful locations of interest, such as restaurants, unique shops, recreational spaces, and much more. The game, however, only takes place in what is essentially a fraction of Tokyo, about 0.1 square kilometers of land. If the developers of the series were to recreate the 13,000 square kilometer Greater Tokyo, you can imagine that places of interest would be few and far in between. This logic is applicable to other games. I think many players are more than happy to explore Los Angeles as it is recreated in GTA 5, where the focus is placed on downtown areas such as Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, and Hollywood, rather than an immense depiction of all suburbs that would feel empty and deserted. Of course, the degree of precision can vary greatly, and it is important to praise titles that do their best when it comes to recreate a real-life location as closely as possible. Let us take the French capital of Paris as an example. It was remade in multiple titles of multiple genres, but it is safe to claim that Assassin's Creed's Unity rendition is more methodological than Mario Kart's rendition, because the latter is more narrow in scope, while the former is more complete and explorable. Games like Euro Truck Simulator 2 play it smartly. Since the focus of the game is, you guessed it, driving trucks across Europe, it makes sense that highways across the continent are fairly accurate, while cities are reduced to their very core. It would not make sense for the developers to waste time recreating billions of tiny city roads when the focus of the game is driving long distances across the old continent. But let us look at the question how games depict real-life locations from a different angle, and explore games that depict alternative versions of our cities and countries. Many are the games that are indeed set in real-life places, but some are set many years in the past, and some others set many years in the future. The Assassin's Creed franchise is renowned to always depict cities centuries in the past, from Ptolemaic Egypt of 2000 years ago to more contemporary eras such as Victorian London. Ubisoft has to put a lot of care to depict as faithfully as possible not only the city but the people who live in them. Just as I stated for Sleeping Dogs, the vibe of the city is perhaps more important than the city herself when it comes to her representation in a game, and this is even truer when the game is set in the past. You can imagine that for a player that is playing a title like Rising of Rome, it is more important to make them feel present in the Asian capital rather than to architecturally remake every square foot of the city. The vibe of the classical era is more important than a millimetric accurate town. But what about games set in the future? How do games depict a future of a real-life location that exists in the present? Many are the interpretation of the future in media. In the case of video games, they tend to be somewhat grim, and in the case of Fallout specifically, quite catastrophic. The Fallout series is known to set their games in a retrofuturistic, atom-punk depiction of America, trying to answer the question how a 50s America would look like in the future where an atomic war took place. The Bethesda-made titles specifically set their games in defined metropolitan areas, while the other titles, developed by Interplay, expand a wider world but with less details. If we take Fallout 4's Boston, we are greeted with the dense, complex city that is filled with rubble. The same applies with Fallout 3's Washington, Fallout New Vegas Las Vegas, and Fallout 76's Charleston. Even if all 4 cities are destroyed from the war, some landmarks are recognizable, and if you're slightly familiar with these towns, you can navigate them somewhat easily. I've made quite a lot of examples to answer the question how do games depict real-life locations, but I did not state explicitly if there are some examples better than others. Sure, it would be easy for me to find a quick answer to the lines of the more games is accurate geographically the better, but that would be dishonest. The thing is, a real-life location is functional to the game's narrative and gameplay in different ways in different titles, meaning that there is no universal consent of what a game's depiction should be. Games like 1111 Memories Retold depict a fraction of Paris, but the way it does it both narratively as well as artistically is splendid, extraordinary, even if limited in explorability. I do like open world games, so having a real life location functioning like a hub for the player is something I appreciate. Having said that, it would be absurd for me to claim that I would rather play The Crew than Crysis just because the former has an open world New York while the latter is more linear in its gameplay structure. Mario Odyssey's Metro Kingdom is a more abstract and smaller rendition of New York City, but will still roam around that world longer than in the other 2 games I've mentioned. The point is, and I promise I will stop doing examples otherwise this video will never end, that video games set in real life locations do not prioritize the location's accuracy over gameplay and story, but rather make use of the known location to enhance its 2 elements as best as they see fit. Games depict cities and landmarks as it suits the rest of the game, not in spite of it. These locations can be vaguer to let the developers play around with fictitious circumstances, or be more specific to specifically play with real-life scenarios. Some locations will have the player explore a neighborhood, while others will have the player drive around an entire continent, both leading the player towards different tasks scattered over different landmarks. Regardless of the hows and whys, I think we can all appreciate when developers go that extra mile to make their in-game cities look as real as possible, whether that is in a free roaming environment or in a Mario Kart racetrack. There are countless games set in real-life locations. Some of them are open-world, some others linear. Some recreate landmarks as accurately as possible, while others take a more unique approach. Some are set in the past, and some others are set in the far future. To go back to the start of the video, the short answer to the question, how do games depict real-life locations, is as before, in many ways. In this video I showed plenty of locations, from America to Australia, but these games are just the tip of the iceberg. If you seek games set in your specific country, you might be surprised at how many games may be set there, and believe me, I'm doing my fair share of research to find them all. If you made it this far, I wish to thank you one too many real life locations times for watching today's video. I admit that this video was a bit more open-ended than the others I've made on the past, but hope today's discussion made you think more about the games you've played, and I'm looking forward to reading your takes. As always, I invite you to leave this video a like, to share it and subscribe for more. I wish you the most wonderful days of all. Arrivederci.